Find yourself here bearing the weight of someone who has absorbed too much for far too long. This burden isn't coincidental. Existence has compelled you to experience everything, not out of malice, but because your consciousness serves as the gateway to primordial wisdom, simultaneously blessing and cursing you. What we term empathy isn't merely sensitivity, nor simply a compassionate nature. It's the profound capacity to perceive the hidden currents that govern another's psyche. It's to stand before someone and sense the tremors of their unconscious as if it were your own essence. For many, this ability becomes overwhelming. When such an individual reaches their breaking point, when they are utterly exhausted, the transformation isn't toward fragility, but towards something formidable. An empath who has reached their limit becomes a force beyond reckoning. They have witnessed the shadow in others and within themselves, and they no longer recoil from its presence. To comprehend why this occurs, we must examine the shadow itself. The shadow isn't a demon lurking in the recesses of consciousness, though it often manifests that way. It encompasses everything you refuse to acknowledge about yourself. Your fury, your envy, your thirst for dominance, your suppressed urges. It contains all the characteristics and impulses you have buried to maintain a socially acceptable facade. Yet, repression is never absolute. The shadow waits in stillness, discovering methods to reveal itself through projections, visions, and encounters with those who reflect your concealed nature. The narcissist represents, in many respects, the living manifestation of shadow energy. They are the bold proclamation of traits that most individuals prefer to deny within themselves. Their arrogance, their craving for recognition, their manipulation. These are elements we secretly recognize but feel too ashamed to acknowledge. The empath, conversely, often exists at the opposing extreme. The empath's own facade. You may perceive yourself as gentle, selfless, nurturing, perpetually giving. But this too is a facade, a persona meticulously crafted to survive in a world that once inflicted wounds upon you. During childhood, you discovered that sensing others' moods meant safety, anticipating danger, soothing rage before it turned against you. You learned that survival depended on reading the emotional undercurrents of any environment as if they were vital signs. Consequently, you became hypersensitive, endlessly accommodating. Yet within you also resides a shadow, the aspect that harbors resentment, that hungers, that yearns to declare, "No, I will not surrender any more of myself to you." When the empath grows weary of being consumed by others' needs, the shadow stirs. This is why an exhausted empath becomes formidable, not because they suddenly turn cruel, but because they cease denying the darker aspects of their nature. They integrate them. Integration represents the key to power. You cannot vanquish the shadow by pretending it doesn't exist. The more you suppress it, the more potent it becomes, lurking in the unconscious and influencing your existence from behind the veil. The empath who hasn't confronted their own shadow remains vulnerable to manipulation. They give excessively, forgive too readily, and become entangled in toxic dynamics with those who exploit their sensitivity. The narcissist, despite their flaws, has made peace with certain shadow aspects. They don't conceal their hunger for attention or control. They wield their shadow openly, albeit unconsciously. But when the empath finally perceives the game for what it is, when they turn inward and confront their own repressed anger, their buried power, their unspoken desires, then the equilibrium shifts. The empath is no longer the passive receiver of wounds, but the alchemist who transforms pain into clarity. Envision this transformation as a vision, for visions reveal truths that the conscious mind cannot grasp. Imagine you are walking through a shadowy forest, the trees murmuring as if alive. You feel observed, pursued by something monstrous. Initially, you flee in terror, but then, exhausted, you turn to confront it. In that moment, you see that the monster bears your own face. This is the essence of shadow work. The thing you fear most was not an external enemy, but a disowned fragment of your own soul. When an empath reaches this realization, they stop running from their anger, their boundaries, their need to assert themselves. They become whole. Wholeness is more powerful than any mask of charm or control a narcissist can conjure. The world fears wholeness because it is unpredictable. A person who has integrated both their light and darkness cannot be easily manipulated. They are no longer compelled by the same unconscious patterns that trap others. They see the narcissist not as a villain to fear, but as a mirror, one that reflects the parts of themselves they have already accepted. This is why the narcissist loses power over an awakened empath. The empath no longer seeks approval, no longer craves the validation that once held them captive. They look the narcissist in the eye and see through the performance, through the fragile ego masquerading as superiority. In that gaze, the narcissist's power crumbles. Yet this journey is neither simple nor comfortable. To awaken as an exhausted empath requires descending into the underworld of your psyche. You must navigate the labyrinth of your own wounds, confronting the specters of childhood, the moments when you felt invisible, unheard, unloved. You must face the truth that your empathy, beautiful as it is, was born of pain. It was a survival mechanism before it became a gift. If you are brave enough to hold this truth without flinching, you will feel something extraordinary, a fire within, a force that is neither purely gentle nor purely fierce, but both. This is the power of the integrated soul. Consider the archetypes that inhabit the collective unconscious. There is the mother, nurturing and compassionate, but also the devouring mother who destroys when boundaries are violated. There is the healer who mends wounds, but also the warrior who protects what is sacred. For too long, the empath has lived only as the mother or the healer, suppressing the warrior and the devouring mother within. When these archetypes unite, the empath becomes something entirely new. They become a guardian of their own soul. They no longer pour themselves out for those who don't value them. They choose where their energy flows. This choice is an act of power. Let me share a story, not a literal one, but a story of the soul. There was once a woman who gave her heart freely to everyone she encountered. She believed that to love meant to bleed for others, to give until she was hollow. One day she met a man who took everything: her time, her energy, her joy. He was charming, but beneath the charm lay a bottomless hunger, the kind that could never be satisfied. She tried to heal him, to fix him, but the more she gave, the more he demanded. One night she dreamed of a serpent. The serpent coiled at the edge of a precipice, its eyes blazing. "Why do you nourish those who would starve you?" the serpent asked. "Why do you surrender your life?" She awoke with tears, realizing that the serpent was her own shadow, calling her back to herself. From that day forward, she stopped pursuing those who couldn't see her worth. She became the serpent, fierce, discerning, yet still capable of love. This is the journey of the empath. The shadow's revenge is not about destruction. It is not about becoming like the narcissist, cold and manipulative. It is about reclaiming what was always yours, your right to exist as a whole, unapologetic being. When you embrace your shadow, you don't lose your compassion, you deepen it. You no longer enable toxic patterns, but you understand them. You no longer confuse love with self-sacrifice, but you see the truth of what love really is. A force that begins within and radiates outward, not a currency to be spent until you are bankrupt. When I speak of the empath's awakening, I am describing a psychological metamorphosis that is both mystical and profoundly human. It begins when you realize that you are not just a passive container for other people's pain. You are not a sponge meant to absorb the wounds of the world without release. You are a soul with its own sovereign fire. But as long as you identify only with your gentle side, as long as you deny the fierce currents of the unconscious, you remain fragmented. The unconscious demands to be acknowledged. When it is not, it will erupt in unexpected ways. Anger that explodes without warning, despair that lingers like fog, dreams that haunt you with symbols you cannot explain. These eruptions are not punishments, they are invitations. Your psyche is calling you to become whole, to stop rejecting the parts of yourself that you fear might make you too much or too dangerous. The empath who refuses this call often remains in a cycle of giving and depletion. They feel morally superior to the narcissist, yet they are secretly enslaved by the same forces: fear of rejection, terror of being unloved. The narcissist shouts their worth into the void, demanding the world acknowledge them, while the empath whispers it in silence, hoping that someone will see their quiet sacrifices and finally declare them enough. But neither strategy works. True power is not found in being needed, nor in forcing admiration. It is found in standing fully in your own being, embracing both the light that heals and the darkness that protects. Diving into the soul's depths. To integrate the shadow is to open a door to the depths of the soul. It is like diving beneath the surface of a still lake. At first, the waters are murky, filled with strange shapes, old memories, forgotten wounds, unspoken words. You feel the pull of the unknown, the fear that you might drown in it. But as you descend, you begin to see more clearly. You recognize the child within you who once believed love was conditional, who believed that silence and self-sacrifice would keep them safe. You recognize the anger you buried, the rage at being used, dismissed, overlooked. As you bring these truths into the light, something astonishing happens. The fear begins to dissolve. You no longer run from your darkness because you see it is not your enemy. It is your strength waiting for you to claim it. Think of the myths of old, where the hero must face the dragon to claim the treasure. The dragon is not just an external beast, but the projection of our own shadow. The empath who has been exhausted, who has reached the breaking point, stands at the mouth of this cave. They can no longer give their power away to those who feed on them. They must face the dragon, not by slaying it, but by recognizing that the dragon is a part of them. The treasure is not gold or jewels, but the fire of selfhood, the ability to stand firm in one's own truth. This is why, when an empath awakens, they can become more formidable than a narcissist. It is not because they seek to harm, but because they are no longer easy to manipulate. Their compassion is now coupled with discernment. They see through the games of ego. They sense the patterns that once ensnared them. Because they have felt the full weight of suffering, they can wield their boundaries with a quiet, unwavering authority. A narcissist can scream, can posture, can attempt to dominate, but none of it matters when the empath no longer feeds the dynamic. The empath becomes like a mirror that reflects truth so clearly that the narcissist cannot bear to look for long. There is an archetype I call the warrior healer, and this is who the awakened empath becomes. The warrior healer does not rush into battle blindly, nor do they give their healing indiscriminately. They know that true healing requires boundaries as much as it requires love. They understand that saying no can be as sacred as saying yes. In the language of dreams, the warrior healer might appear as a figure dressed in both white and black, holding a torch in one hand and a shield in the other. This archetype symbolizes balance, the merging of empathy and self-protection, the unification of light and shadow. I have witnessed this transformation in those who have suffered the most. A woman who once felt invisible to her family, who gave and gave until she could no longer breathe, suddenly stands tall one day and says, "I will not be your emotional servant anymore." A man who spent his life absorbing the anger of others, who believed that to be gentle was his only virtue, suddenly discovers that his anger is not evil but sacred. It is the boundary that tells the world, I exist, I matter. These are not small awakenings, they are revolutions of the soul. But make no mistake, this path requires courage. To awaken as an exhausted empath is to lose parts of your old identity. You may find that people who once relied on you to be endlessly available will resist your new boundaries. They will call you selfish, cold, changed. But this is not selfishness, it is self-respect. You are not abandoning your empathy. You are refining it. You are choosing to direct it where it can truly flourish, rather than allowing it to be drained by those who cannot appreciate it. In doing so, you will find that your love becomes more powerful, more alive, because it is no longer given from a place of fear, but from a place of freedom. The collapse of illusions. The narcissist's power is illusory. It is built on the fragile scaffolding of ego, on the desperate need to be admired, to be seen as more than they truly are. When you, as an empath, cease to feed that need, the structure collapses. You do not need to fight them. You simply need to stand in your truth. It is like turning on a light in a room full of shadows. The illusions vanish, and what remains is the raw truth. This truth is often uncomfortable, even painful, but it is liberating. It frees you from the cycle of giving and taking, of victim and predator. Sometimes this awakening comes suddenly, like a lightning strike. You wake up one day and realize you can no longer tolerate the weight of false relationships, false roles. Other times it comes gradually, like the slow dawning of morning light. You begin to notice patterns you once ignored. You see how often you said yes when your soul screamed no. You feel the exhaustion of carrying emotions that were never yours to bear. With each small act of reclaiming your voice, your power grows. It is not about becoming hard or bitter. It is about becoming whole. Wholeness, as I have said, is the true goal of life. It is not about being perfect or pure, but about embracing the totality of who you are. This is why I have always emphasized individuation, the process of becoming your true self. Not the self that society demands, not the self that pleases everyone, but the self that is rooted in the deep, mysterious center of your being. For the empath, individuation means no longer defining yourself solely by what you give. It means seeing that your sensitivity is not just a gift for others, but also a path for your own growth. It means honoring your needs, your boundaries, your dreams, even if it disappoints others. Let me give you another image, for images speak to the unconscious in ways that words alone cannot. Imagine you are standing before a great mirror. At first, you see only your reflection, the face you present to the world, kind and soft, always smiling. But as you look closer, the mirror begins to ripple. Behind your reflection, another figure appears. This figure has eyes like fire and a presence that commands attention. This is your shadow, not as an enemy, but as an ally. It steps forward and places a hand on your shoulder. I am you, it says. I am the part of you that knows when to fight, when to stand, when to say no. Do not fear me. I am your strength. When you accept this figure, you no longer need to overextend yourself to prove your worth. You already are enough. This acceptance is what makes the empath truly powerful. They do not need to mimic the narcissist's tactics. They do not need to become hard or cruel. Instead, they embody both compassion and strength, both softness and fire. They can see the wounds behind the narcissist's mask, but they do not allow those wounds to dictate their own worth. They understand that every person carries a shadow, and they do not judge theirs as something to be eradicated. They work with it, like a sculptor working with stone, shaping it into something meaningful. When you step into this integrated state, the world begins to shift around you. People who once drained your energy, who once leaned on your constant willingness to say yes, may start to pull away. This is not a punishment, but a liberation. You are no longer the unconscious vessel for their unresolved pain. You see, the empath's gift becomes dangerous only when it is unconscious, when it is given without discernment, when it becomes a habit born of fear rather than an act of true love. But once you become aware, once you bring light into the darkness of your own motives, you can offer your gift from a place of choice. You give not because you are afraid of rejection, but because your soul genuinely desires to create and nurture life. When you choose to withhold, it is not cruelty, it is wisdom. It is the knowledge that your energy is sacred. The narcissist senses this change. They are used to feeding on the light of those who bend and break under their demands. When an empath awakens, that dynamic no longer works. The narcissist's tactics, charm, guilt, manipulation, lose their grip. It is like trying to cast a shadow on the sun itself. The empath does not fight back in the same way, for they do not need to. Their power is quiet, steady, rooted in the core of who they are. This is the revenge of the shadow, not through destruction, but through the simple act of being whole. Wholeness itself becomes a form of resistance because it refuses to play the roles that keep toxic cycles alive. The hero's inward journey. But let us not pretend this awakening is easy. It requires you to confront the parts of yourself that have been buried for years, sometimes decades. Perhaps you have dreams where you are chased by wild animals, or where your voice is stolen, or where you wander through an endless house with locked doors. These dreams are not random. They are messages from your unconscious, urging you to look deeper. The wild animal might be your repressed anger, demanding to be acknowledged. The stolen voice might represent the times you silenced yourself to keep the peace. The locked doors might symbolize aspects of your personality you have yet to explore. If you dare to listen, if you dare to unlock those doors, you will find treasures hidden in the darkness. The very qualities you once rejected, your anger, your hunger for freedom, your fierce independence, are the keys to your true power. The empath's journey is, in many ways, a hero's journey. But unlike the classic hero who ventures into distant lands, your journey is inward. You descend into the labyrinth of your own psyche, facing illusions, shadows, and mirrors. Along the way, you encounter archetypes that guide and challenge you. There is the innocent child who longs for unconditional love. There is the wounded healer who tries to mend others as a way of avoiding their own pain. There is the shadow warrior, fierce and untamed, who demands that you set boundaries and claim your place in the world. Each of these figures is part of you. As you integrate them, you begin to walk differently. Your voice deepens. Your presence carries weight. You no longer apologize for existing. This transformation doesn't mean you stop feeling. On the contrary, your sensitivity becomes sharper, clearer. But now you can feel without drowning. You can witness the suffering of others without taking it on as your own. You can love deeply without losing yourself in the process. This is the difference between unconscious empathy and conscious empathy. Unconscious empathy is like a river without banks. It floods everything, often destroying the very ground it touches. Conscious empathy, however, is like a river guided by strong, clear banks. It flows with purpose, nourishing rather than depleting. Sometimes people fear that embracing the shadow will make them cruel or detached, but this is a misunderstanding. The shadow is not evil. It is simply the part of you that has been unloved. When you embrace it, you don't become less compassionate. You become more authentic. Your compassion is no longer a performance, no longer something you do to earn love. It arises naturally, like sunlight streaming through a clear window. When you say no, when you walk away, it is not out of anger, but out of alignment with your soul's truth. I recall a patient I once worked with, a woman who had spent her entire life as the caretaker for everyone around her. She was beloved, yes, but also exhausted, resentful, and quietly broken. When we began exploring her dreams, she kept seeing images of a burning house. At first, she feared these dreams, thinking they meant destruction. But as we worked together, she realized the fire was not meant to destroy her. It was meant to purify her. It was the fire of her own rage, the rage she had suppressed for decades, the rage that said, "I deserve to exist for myself, not just for others." When she embraced this fire, she did not become cruel. She became radiant. She began to set boundaries with a calm firmness that surprised even her. She stopped apologizing for taking up space. As she changed, her relationships changed too. Some people left, unable to handle the new version of her. But those who truly loved her stayed, and their love deepened, for it was no longer built on one-sided sacrifice. This is the essence of the empath's shadow revenge. It is not about hurting anyone. It is about ceasing to hurt yourself. It is about refusing to participate in the patterns that have drained you for so long. When you step out of those patterns, you disrupt the entire dynamic. The narcissist who thrives on control no longer finds a willing participant. The energy exchange collapses, and in that collapse you are free. But freedom can feel strange at first. You may feel empty, unsure of who you are without the constant role of caretaker or fixer. This is natural. It is like stepping out of a costume you have worn for years. You must get used to your own skin again. This is where self-discovery becomes essential. You must ask yourself questions that you may have avoided. What do I truly want? What brings me joy? What kind of life feels aligned with my soul? These questions are not selfish, they are sacred. They lead you to your true self, the self that existed before the wounds, before the masks. There is a profound beauty in this journey, but also a rawness. Sometimes you will feel as if you are shedding layers of your very identity. Old friendships may fall away. Old roles may crumble. You may feel as if you are walking through a desert with no clear destination. But this is the space where transformation happens. It is a dark night of the soul, where the old dies so the new can be born. Do not fear this darkness. It is fertile ground. It is the womb of your next self. If you listen deeply during this time, you will hear the voice of your own unconscious speaking to you. It may come through dreams, through sudden insights, through the feeling of déjà vu, as if you have walked this path before. This is because the journey of individuation is universal. Every soul must, in its own way, confront its shadow and claim its wholeness. You are not alone in this. The collective unconscious holds the wisdom of countless others who have walked this road. You can feel their presence if you are quiet enough. The ancient healers, the warriors, the mystics, they whisper, "Do not be afraid. This is who you were meant to become." When you integrate your shadow, you become unpredictable in the most beautiful way. You can still be gentle, but you are no longer easily broken. You can still love, but you no longer lose yourself in the process. You become like a tree with deep roots. Storms may come, winds may blow, but you remain grounded. The narcissist's games, the manipulations of others, no longer pull you off center. You can see them for what they are, expressions of unhealed pain, desperate attempts to control what cannot be controlled. Because you no longer need to fix or rescue them, you are free to walk your own path. As you continue to awaken, you will begin to notice that the world reflects your inner state with uncanny precision. Situations and people that once triggered deep wounds will appear again, but now you meet them differently. You no longer shrink, no longer give away your power as an unconscious act of survival. Instead, you hold your ground with acquired strength that comes from knowing who you are. This is the true victory over the narcissistic forces of the world, not to defeat them, but to transcend them. For the narcissist at their core is not an enemy, but a soul lost in its own maze of shadow. They are driven by an unquenchable thirst for validation, and in that thirst they cling to control, manipulation, and illusion. When you, the empath, awaken, you see this dynamic clearly. You no longer respond to their cries for attention with the same desperate giving. You can love them as a fellow human being, but you do not let them drink from your soul. There is a certain sacredness in this shift. It is as if the universe itself breathes differently through you. You find yourself standing at the edge of your own destiny, sensing that every pain you endured was not meaningless, but preparation. The years of absorbing, of feeling too much, were not wasted. They have taught you to see into the depths of the human heart. But now you use this vision with wisdom. You discern who is ready for your presence, who can receive your love without consuming it, and who must be kept at a distance. There is no anger in this discernment, no bitterness. It is simply clarity, and clarity is one of the rarest gifts a soul can offer itself. In the language of Jung, this is the process of individuation reaching a crucial threshold. You are no longer identified solely with your persona, the mask you wear to please and to serve, nor are you enslaved by your shadow, acting out the repressed anger or fear that lurks beneath the surface. Instead, you are both light and shadow, both conscious and unconscious, both the healer and the warrior. You are a whole being, capable of meeting life on its own terms without being consumed by it. This wholeness radiates from you in ways that others can feel, even if they cannot name it. Some will be drawn to it, sensing in you a kind of authenticity that the world rarely offers. Others, particularly those who thrive on manipulation, may be unsettled by it, for they can no longer find the cracks in your soul to exploit. Finding a sacred path. To live in this way is to walk a sacred path. You begin to realize that your empathy is not meant to be spent recklessly, like water poured into the desert. It is meant to be offered where it can truly nourish, where it can grow gardens instead of evaporating into barren sands. This requires patience and discernment, and sometimes it requires solitude. There will be moments when you feel called to withdraw, to sit with your own soul in silence, to listen to the whispers of the unconscious. Do not fear this solitude. It is in these quiet spaces that the deepest integration happens. You may find that your dreams grow more vivid, that symbols and archetypes visit you in ways you cannot fully explain. These are not mere fantasies. They are the language of the psyche, guiding you toward your next step. I want to speak of dreams once more, for they hold the key to so much of this process. Imagine a dream where you are walking along a path at night, the moon casting strange shadows on the ground. You come to a crossroads. One path leads into a dark forest, the other into a bright meadow. Most would choose the meadow, for it looks safe, inviting. But the true path of transformation lies in the forest. It is there, among the tangled branches and the hidden creatures, that you will find the parts of yourself that have been waiting for you. The empath who dares to walk this path will find not only their shadow, but also their true strength. They will meet the archetypes that dwell in the depths, the wise old man or woman, the trickster, the inner child, the self. Each encounter is a revelation, each step a shedding of old illusions. As you return from this inner forest, you emerge changed. You no longer fit the molds that others placed upon you. You no longer apologize for your boundaries, your voice, your truth. Some will not understand this change, and that is fine. You did not come here to be understood by everyone. You came here to become yourself, fully and unapologetically. The power of wholeness. In doing so, you become a light for those who are ready to see, not a light that burns itself out trying to save everyone, but a steady flame that inspires by simply existing. The shadow's revenge, then, is not an act of retaliation. It is a natural consequence of wholeness. When you integrate your shadow, you no longer play small. You no longer hide your power to make others comfortable. You embody a presence that says, without words, I am here, I see you. I see through the illusions, and I will not betray myself to keep your ego intact. This kind of presence can be unsettling to those who live in denial, but it is also profoundly healing. For when you live in truth, you give others permission to face their own shadows. Let me offer you one final vision. Imagine standing on a cliff at dawn, the world below still wrapped in mist. You have walked a long and difficult road to reach this place. You carry scars, yes, but they are no longer wounds. They are the marks of your becoming. You watch as the first rays of sunlight break through the clouds, illuminating the landscape. In that moment, you understand that everything you endured, every pain, every betrayal, has brought you here to this clarity, this strength, this wholeness. You are no longer the empath who bends and breaks for the world. You are the empath who stands tall, rooted like the mountain itself. The narcissist, the manipulator, the taker, they cannot shake you now. Your power does not come from fighting them, but from knowing yourself so deeply that nothing external can define you. Embracing your shadow. This is the gift of the shadow. It teaches you that you are not only your kindness, not only your compassion. You are also your boundaries, your voice, your fire. You are a tapestry woven of both light and dark threads. When you accept the full pattern, you become unstoppable. You do not need to prove your worth because you see that your worth is inherent, eternal, unshaken by the opinions of others. You do not need to rescue anyone because you trust that each soul must walk its own path, face its own dragons, integrate its own shadows. You can walk beside them, yes, but you do not lose yourself in their journey. In this wholeness, love itself transforms. It is no longer the desperate, self-sacrificing love of the wounded empath, nor the demanding, self-centered love of the narcissist. It becomes something vast, something free. It is the love that sees all, accepts all, and yet remains true to itself. It is the love that can say yes and no with equal grace. It is a love that flows from a soul that is no longer divided. And so I say to you, do not fear the moment when you feel fed up. Do not fear the breaking point, for it is often the threshold of your awakening. When you can no longer carry the old patterns, when you finally say enough, you open the door to a deeper truth. You are not meant to live as a servant to the shadows of others. You are meant to stand as a being of both light and shadow, fully alive, fully awake. This is your true power, and it is greater than any mask, any manipulation, any illusion that the world can throw at you. If you are listening now, perhaps you feel this fire stirring within you. Perhaps you are ready to step into the forest, to face the parts of yourself you have long avoided. If so, I invite you to trust the process. The shadow will not destroy you. It will reveal you. It will strip away the false layers and leave you with something real, something unshakable. When you emerge, you will no longer ask why the fed-up empath is more dangerous than the narcissist. You will know. Because danger, in this sense, is not about harm. It is about power. The power of a soul that has embraced its wholeness. The power of a heart that can love without losing itself. The power of a being who is no longer bound by fear. This is your path now. Walk it with courage. Walk it with the knowledge that you are not alone, that the collective unconscious supports you, that every archetype within you, every healer, every warrior, every child, every sage, walks beside you. And as you walk, remember this: your shadow is not your enemy. It is your ally, your teacher, your deepest source of strength. Embrace it, and you will find that nothing in this world can truly harm you, for you will have become what you were always meant to be, whole.